The Constitutional Court has ruled that the changes in the public media made by Minister Sienkiewicz and his appointees are unconstitutional. At issue is the legislation under which the Minister of Culture changed the governing bodies of Television Poland, Polish Radio, and then began the procedure to liquidate these companies. What does the Culture Ministry say about this? The Constitutional Court's ruling on the units of public broadcasting has no legal significance whatsoever, it said in a communiqué. Obviously, because this government does not recognise many state institutions, including the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court has ruled that the Broadcasting Act does not allow the provisions of the Commercial Companies Code, invoked by Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz, to apply to public media. Public broadcasting units may not be dissolved and liquidated. It is inconsistent with Article 2 of the Constitution. In the opinion of representatives of the governing coalition, the verdict is legally flawed, and they also undermine the status of judges. The Ministry of Culture cites the rulings of the court, not of the Polish court, but of the European Court. Today's ruling of the Constitutional Court on public broadcasting units has no legal significance whatsoever. The rulings and resolution issued in recent years by the European Court of Human Rights and the Supreme Court relating to the current construction of the Constitutional Court, including the entire circumstances of the staffing and functioning of this institution, confirm that it is not an independent and impartial constitutional court, and that its judgments, issued with the participation of so-called understudied judges, persons appointed as judges to the Constitutional Court for seats already filled, do not have universally binding force and are not final. They should be disregarded in legal proceedings as non-existent. Ruling coalition deputies defend Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz's actions on putting public media into liquidation. If there is no money to maintain this company today, we act in law to save the TV station. Last December, the legislation invoked by Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz was referred to the Constitutional Court by Law and Justice deputies. Interestingly, on the 10th of January, the company's registry court decided to refuse to enter the changes of data in the National Court Register regarding Telewizja Polska. The decision indicated that the resolution on the appointment of members of the company's supervisory board and management board was adopted by an unauthorized body. Confirmed the legality of these actions by the National Judicial Register, which did not recognize these decisions. There are attempts by the ruling coalition to bend the law and misapply regulations. This is, unfortunately, a complete devaluation that is being done by those circles that enacted the current constitution. Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz may also have committed a falsehood. When the Sejm passed a resolution on public media after 10 p.m. on the 19th of December last year, moments later, in just 107 minutes, Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz convened a general meeting of TVP Polska, Polish Radio and the Polish press agency companies, naming their boards of directors and supervisory boards. A pace truly fast, even unbelievable. The Culture Minister refuses to confirm these facts by presenting, for example, monitoring or an entry and exit book. The functioning of the rule of law is to respect the laws that are in force, especially if these are court rulings. So we are dealing with a kind of coup d'etat. The Constitutional Court also ruled that any decisions issued by Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz on the public media under the provisions of the Commercial Companies Code have no legal effect. Łukasz Muda, Telewizja Republika. What next for a nuclear power plant in Pomerania? In recent days, the new provincial authorities have spoken critically on the subject. Pomeranian Voivod Beata Rutkiewicz admits the decision has not yet been made, and the coming months will be decisive when it comes to the location in the Lubiatowo Kopalin in the Chochewo commune, as well as the choice of technology. The matter is serious because the Marshal of the Pomorskie Voivodeship is raising doubts about the location of the nuclear plant. The document has reached the desk of Prime Minister Donald Tusk. On whether, where and when the first nuclear power plant will be built in Poland, here's Konrad Chmioła. Prime Minister Donald Tusk is convinced that the potential relocation of the investment is a simple misunderstanding. All the confusion stems from the unreliability of the message. The governor has already issued a statement on the matter. However, a statement by Pomeranian Governor Beata Rutkiewicz shows that the decision to change the location of the nuclear power plant in Pomerania is indeed under consideration. Donald Tusk was silent on the fact that a memorandum on the matter has already been received in the Prime Minister's office. It is legitimate to revisit and analyse the issued environmental decision for the location of the power plant in Lubiatów. Final decisions on the location for the nuclear power plant in Pomerania will be made by the government of the Republic of Poland in due course after detailed analysis. Conducting detailed analyses in practice will mean auditing the environmental decision, which takes a very long time. It took 8 years to issue the current one. The application for the environmental decision was submitted to the General Directorate of Environmental Protection in mid-2015. The final decision of the Directorate, on the other hand, was not made until September 2023. The process of issuing the environmental decision was overseen at the time by Małgorzata Golinska, the Deputy Minister of Climate and Environment. This location has all the required approvals, despite many adversities. Prime Minister Donald Tusk did not respond to a question on whether the investment will be built in the indicated location. Can the Prime Minister assure us that the investment will be built in the indicated location? We will accelerate work on nuclear power and do it in accordance with all standards. We hear that another environmental review needs to be done. Back in 2011, under the PO-PSL government, 3 potential sites were identified in Hochevo, Zarnov and Gaski. The latter location was quickly abandoned, but the construction of a power plant in Zhornoviets continues to be a potential possibility as suggested by local authorities. Interestingly, in mid-December, Beata Rundkiewicz became the Pomeranian voivoda, and one of her first decisions was to undermine the environmental decision for the investment in the Hochevo commune. I think the coming months will be a tightened mode of work. Construction of such a power plant is a threat to the environment. Construction has already begun, and in May 2023 an agreement was signed with an international consortium of Westinghouse and Bechtel to build Poland's first nuclear power plant. A possible change of location or technology will again extend the project process by many years, and delay may discourage investors. We cannot wait. We must get the power plants up and running as soon as possible. I have no doubt at all that if there is a change of location, then this project will not happen. It is worth noting that the authorities of some German states were critical of the investment. After the Fukushima disaster in 2011, the then German Chancellor Angela Merkel decided to shut down all nuclear renewable energy sources are the pillar of the German energy system, and Germany is the world's 3rd largest producer of green energy. German companies dominate the production of wind turbines, among other things. Germany cares about basing itself on renewables and wants to sell it. Poland's first nuclear power plant unit should come online in 2033, unless complications arise and the nuclear power plant is built quickly. Now, coal-fired power plants account for the largest share of Poland's energy production. According to EU directives, Poland must reduce greenhouse gas emissions by more than half by 2030. We will be buying renewables from Germany. Deputy Climate and Environment Minister Ursula Zielińska announced in Brussels that the Polish government will support a plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 90% by 2040. Deputy Minister Zielińska's announcements mean sharp reductions in emissions, which will affect, among other things, transportation, agriculture and energy, or translate directly into the wallets of all Poles.
The Central Anti-Corruption Bureau, or CBA, came across a trail of irregularities in the issuance of visas at Polish diplomatic missions back in March. However, there was a lot of manipulation in the case, and the PO used the case in their election campaign to attack the Law and Justice Party. Now, as soon as investigators began to act, Piotr Wawrzyk, who was detained yesterday, lost his position as Deputy Foreign Minister. What's the backstory of the case, which has been called by the platform a big scandal? Today, I check, says Edyta Hołodyńska. On the order of the Lublin prosecutor's office, the CBA detained Piotr Wawrzyk in an investigation of paid patronage in connection with expediting visa procedures. So far, 9 suspects have been charged in the case. The ruling party is triumphant. It's good that the protective umbrella over important law and justice politicians who have committed terrible things has been rolled up. Wawrzyk is facing charges, but this does not prevent him from facing an investigative commission. PO parliamentarians are well aware that the affair is not a peace affair. It's not like this affair appeared all of a sudden, this year, a couple of weeks ago, or even a few months ago. Information about the fact that Polish visas were being sold to whomever asked, and whether this poses a risk or not, these visas were being sold for years. This case is rife with manipulation. Visas were not bought, but places were queued, and there was no online visas or work permits issued from abroad. This case was being used for political purposes during the most recent leadership campaign. Edgar K., who was detained in April as Piotr Wawrzyk's closest aide, played a key role in the visa scandal as a middleman between those who wanted to push visas for certain individuals for a fee, of course. He heard a charge of brokering a deal in exchange for financial benefit or the promise thereof. The CBA found a trail of irregularities in July of 2022. It is then that very intensive operations were launched. An official investigation began in March of 2023. The reaction was immediate. A measure of responsible authorities is their ability to detect such cases and then find those responsible. We are doing just that. As I became aware of the irregularities, I demanded from Minister Rao that he take immediate consequences from personnel involved, including Minister Vavřik, and this is what happened. Well, how does it work? You can make an appointment at the consulate by phone, by email, but mainly through e-consulate systems. In many cases and places around the world, interest in visas is so high and staff are so scarce that spots disappear very quickly, and there is no real way to make an available appointment. The case was therefore not about criminal procedures in issuing visas, but in booking appointments at consulates, which means that it was not the visas that were paid for, but the place in line, and not to consuls or ministers, but to corrupt companies or individuals. And this system was in place long before the peace government came to power. How many visas were involved and the procedure by which this was done was detected by our services. As the prosecutor's office points out, expediting itself may have taken place, but it did not affect the decision to grant a visa. On the contrary, in these cases, there were more refusals than granted visas, which only confirms that officials acted correctly. A Bollywood film crew was just alerted to the case by officials. Among other things, it was decided to conduct an inspection and audit of the MFA's consular department and to dismiss Jakub Osaida, director of the MFA's Office of Legal and Compliance Management, from his post. Now, these charges relate to the period from February 2022 to May 2023. According to the prosecutor's office, the suspects allegedly exceeded their authority by violating registration and document circulation procedures. The charges also relate to making unwarranted interventions, to expedite visa procedures, and providing an unauthorized person with information covered by official secrets. Vavřik faces up to 10 years in prison.
The fourth day of the World Economic Forum concluded today. High on the agenda, besides climate change and the pandemics, was, of course, the geopolitical situation around the globe, and that includes the situation in Gaza and in Ukraine. Today, United States Vice President Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, encouraged world leaders to raise their voices in what he called a global anti-Semitism crisis, which he said has worsened since the start of the Gaza conflict. His co-panelist, Israeli First Lady Michelle Herzog, said the 7th of October Hamas attacks on Israel had led to a sharp rise in anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism, as we know, was always there. And maybe it was not such bon ton to show your anti-Semitism, but October 7th, the massacre, the attack of Hamas on Israel on October 7th, I think unleashed everything. The masks were taken off.
All the panelists agreed that education about the Holocaust and stricter monitoring of information relayed on social media were needed in the face of rising hatred against the Jewish community. In terms of the continuing struggle in Ukraine, Lithuanian, Polish and Romanian foreign ministers discussed Eastern European border security at the forum today. Romanian Foreign Minister Luminita Teodora Odăbescu stated that European countries need to remain committed to supporting Ukraine as the aggression may not stop at the Ukrainian border. Lithuanian Foreign Minister Gabrielas Landsbergis emphasized the necessity for European cooperation on sanctions enforcement. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski highlighted that Eastern European countries are not, as many say, too alarmist about possible Russian threats.
Because Westerners are always suspecting us in Eastern Europe of being too sensitive to Russian threats. Well, first of all, it's experience. If you're Israeli and Iran threatens you, you believe them. If you're Polish or Lithuanian and the Russians threaten you, it's usually credible. It's 500 years of experience.
In further tensions around the globe, Pakistan's caretaker Prime Minister Anwar ul-Haq Kakar will cut short his visit to the World Economic Forum in Davos, the country's foreign ministry spokesman said today, amidst escalating tensions with Iran. Pakistan said it had conducted strikes inside Iran on Thursday, targeting separatist Baloch militants, 2 days after Tehran said it had attacked the bases of another group within Pakistani territory. Iranian media said several missiles hit a village in the Sistan Baluchistan province that borders Pakistan, and that 3 women and 4 children, all non-Iranians, were killed. The strikes into Iranian territory came after Iran said on Tuesday it had targeted Israeli-linked militant bases inside Pakistan. Pakistan said civilians had been hit and 2 children killed in Tuesday's attack, and warned that there would be consequences for which Tehran would be responsible. The World Economic Forum concludes tomorrow.